My name was Olivia McCarthy, and if you're hearing this story, it means my death has finally brought to light secrets that had been buried for 14 long years. I died on a rainy October morning in Boston at the age of 32, hit by a car while carrying a letter that would change not only my son's life, but also expose the rot hidden behind the perfect facades of wealthy families. Do you know what it's like to grow up being seen as not good enough? At 18, I was just a waitress working at the prestigious Beacon Hill Country Club, where serving expensive drinks to even more expensive people was my daily reality. My mother had died when I was 16, leaving behind only medical debt that forced me to abandon my college dreams. My father? Well, he decided that raising a daughter alone was too much responsibility and simply vanished when I needed him the most. It was the summer of 2010 when Christopher Whitmore entered my life like a hurricane disguised as a gentle breeze. At 20, he was unlike anyone else who frequented the club. While others treated me like invisible furniture, Christopher greeted me by name, asked how my day had been, and always left generous tips that made a real difference in my tight budget. "Olivia, you have a smile that lights up this whole gloomy place," he told me the first time we talked beyond the usual, "What would you like to drink?" I was cleaning empty tables when he approached, still wearing his pristine tennis uniform after a match with his father. I found out that Christopher was the heir to a family fortune estimated at $80 million, built by his Irish grandfather who came to the United States with only $20 in his pocket and turned a small construction company into a real estate empire. It was old money, respected, the kind that opened doors just by carrying the Whitmore name. But what drew me to Christopher wasn't his bank account. It was his soul. While his parents, Mary Beth and Charles Whitmore, were obsessed with social status and appearances, Christopher dreamed of being an artist. Hidden away in his room, he painted stunning pieces he never showed anyone, afraid of how his family would react, people who saw art as idle nonsense. During that magical summer, Christopher took me to little restaurants far from the watchful eyes of Boston's elite. We talked for hours about books, dreams, about how life could be different if we weren't prisoners of others' expectations. Do you know what I love most about you, Olivia? You're real, completely real. You don't wear masks. You never pretend to be someone you're not. I was hopelessly in love, naively believing that love could conquer anything. Christopher kept talking about introducing me to his family, about our future together, and how I'd be welcomed with open arms because his heart belonged to me. "My family is going to love you, Olivia. How could they not? You're perfect." How foolish I was. Reality hit like an icy slap in September when Mary Beth Whitmore showed up at the club on a particularly busy afternoon. Elegant and intimidating in her Chanel dress and jewelry worth more than my annual salary, she asked for a private conversation in the club's library. "Listen carefully, young lady. I know exactly what you're trying to do with my son. Girls like you show up every summer trying to take advantage of naive young men. But Christopher has a bright future ahead of him, and that future does not include an uneducated waitress." I tried to defend myself, to explain that our feelings were genuine, but she cut me off with a cold laugh. "Feelings? Sweetheart, feelings don't pay the bills. You want money, and Christopher has plenty, but our family protects what's ours." That's when I found out I was pregnant. Drop a comment letting me know where you're listening to this story from. Stories like Olivia's happen all over the world, and each place has its own version of families who think money can buy anything, even silence. Pregnancy changed everything. When I found out I was expecting, my first thought was to tell Christopher. We scheduled a date for the weekend. I wanted to give him the news in person, to see his reaction, to plan our future together. But the Whitmores found out first. Dr. Martinez, the club physician who confirmed my pregnancy, had been a family friend for decades. One discreet phone call was all it took for my secret to reach the wrong ears before I could share it with the right person. The morning after my exam, before I could find Christopher, I got a cold call from Charles Whitmore. "Miss McCarthy, I need to see you at 5 o'clock today at our residence. It's regarding my son's future." The Whitmore mansion in Beacon Hill was even more intimidating inside than I had imagined. Antique furniture, priceless artwork, Persian rugs worth more than most cars. Mary Beth and Charles received me in the living room like I was a plague to be eradicated. "We've learned about your situation," Charles began, adjusting his gold-rimmed glasses with the arrogance of someone who's never had to fight for anything in life. Mary Beth leaned forward, her icy blue eyes locked on mine. "Christopher will be leaving for Oxford tomorrow. It's all arranged, a 2-year master's in business. He doesn't know about the child, and he won't." "You can't do this," I protested, my voice trembling with outrage. "Christopher has the right to know he's going to be a father. Christopher has the right to the future we planned for him, and that future does not include being tied down at 18 with an unwanted pregnancy from a waitress." That's when Mary Beth delivered the threat that would change everything. "Listen closely, young lady. If you try to contact Christopher, if you try to claim anything from this child, we will use our resources to prove that you are an unfit mother. We're a respected family with the best lawyers in the country. A poor, single waitress doesn't stand a chance against us in court. We'll take custody of the child, and you'll never see him again. That's your choice. Walk away now and raise your child far from us, or lose him forever." I left that mansion destroyed, carrying not just a life inside me, but the crushing weight of defeat. The next day, Christopher left for England, unaware that he was leaving behind not only a great love, but a child. The following years were the hardest of my life. Tyler was born in a public hospital in December 2010, a beautiful baby who looked just like his father from day one. I worked 3 jobs at once, cleaning offices at night, waitressing during the day, and delivering food in the evenings to support my son in a tiny studio apartment in Boston's cheapest neighborhood. Tyler grew up wearing thrift store clothes, eating instant noodles for most meals, watching other boys play with expensive toys we couldn't afford. But he was brilliant, smart, curious, kind. Even in the toughest conditions, he never complained, always helped however he could. "Mommy, why don't we have much money?" he asked me when he was 8, after seeing a commercial for an amusement park on TV. How do you explain to a child that his father came from a millionaire family, but that same family considered us unworthy of existing? Some families have more, some have less, sweetheart, but we have love, and that's what matters most. A lie. Love didn't pay late rent. Love didn't buy medicine when Tyler got sick. Love didn't fix it when the electricity was cut off. Meanwhile, through social media, I watched Christopher thrive. In 2012, he returned from Oxford with honors and took over part of the family business. I tried to contact him a few times in the first years after his return. Letters that never reached him, phone calls blocked by his parents before he ever knew I'd tried. Eventually, I gave up, intimidated by the Whitmore's threats that echoed in my mind. In 2018, Christopher married Victoria Ashford, daughter of a traditional family of entrepreneurs, in a lavish ceremony that made it into every society column in the city. They lived in a mansion in Back Bay, traveled to Europe 3 times a year, and lived the perfect life money could buy. By 2024, when Tyler turned 14, the situation reached its breaking point. My son, brilliant and determined, got a job as a food delivery boy to help with the household bills. Seeing that boy working when he should have been focused on school and friends broke my heart for good. "Mom, it's okay," he comforted me one night when he saw me crying over the pile of overdue bills. "We've always made it. We'll make it again." That night, I made the decision that would change everything. It was time to fight for my son's rights. I spent weeks writing a letter to Christopher. I told him everything about the pregnancy, the threats from his family, how we had raised Tyler in poverty while they swam in money that was, in part, rightfully our son's. I included recent photos of Tyler, photos that made it impossible to deny Christopher's paternity, and copies of every medical document that proved he was the father. "Christopher," I wrote in the closing lines of the letter, "our son is working at 14 years old to help pay rent on a studio apartment while you live in a mansion built partly with an inheritance that should also be his. I don't want your money for myself. I want justice for Tyler. He deserves to know his father, to have the opportunities money can provide, to live the life you've denied us for 14 years. The letter was ready by October. After days of rehearsing the courage, I decided to deliver it in person to Christopher's office. I didn't trust the mail. It was far too important to risk. It was a typical rainy autumn morning in Boston. Golden leaves stuck to the wet sidewalks, and the cold wind cut through my thin coat. I was nervous, heart pounding out of rhythm, but determined. I held the letter inside a plastic folder, protected from the rain, as if carrying the key to my son's future. And I was. The last thought I had before the impact was of Tyler, of how I would tell him that I had finally tried to do the right thing. The car hit me at the corner of Boylston Street in Arlington, just 3 blocks from Christopher's office. The rain had turned the asphalt into a mirror, and I never even saw the vehicle skidding toward me. I died instantly, according to the paramedics. But the folder with the letter remained intact, protected from the impact and the rain by my own body. The irony of life or death is merciless. According to Boston police protocol, my personal belongings were delivered to the recipient listed on the letter found with me, Christopher Whitmore. I imagined the shock on his face when he got that call from the police. "Mr. Whitmore, we regret to inform you that a woman named Olivia McCarthy was involved in a fatal accident this morning. She was carrying a letter addressed to you. We need you to come to the station to collect her belongings." Christopher must have been paralyzed upon hearing my name after 14 years of silence. He canceled all his meetings and rushed to the station like a man possessed. When he finally read my letter, alone in his office 2 hours later, Christopher broke down. He didn't just cry, he completely unraveled. The photos of Tyler, showing a boy who looked exactly like him at 14, were irrefutable proof that needed no DNA test. But he did one anyway, because he needed official confirmation for what was to come. 99.9% match. Tyler was officially his son. What followed at the Whitmore mansion was explosive. Christopher came home that night transformed into something his parents had never seen before. A furious, determined man. 14 years? His voice echoed through the elegant hallways as he confronted Mary Beth and Charles in the living room. "You kept it from me, that I had a son, for 14 years?" Mary Beth tried to maintain her composure, but her mask of superiority was cracking. "Christopher, darling, we did what was best for you. That girl was only after your money. You didn't even give me the chance to decide." Christopher threw the photos of Tyler on the coffee table, spreading them like playing cards. "Look at him. "Look, it's impossible to deny he's my son, and you sent me off to Oxford without even telling me Olivia was pregnant?" Charles stood slowly, trying to regain control of the situation. "Son, you don't understand the implications." "The implications?" Christopher laughed, but it was a bitter, hollow laugh. "The implications are that I missed every important moment of my son's life. First steps, first words, first day of school. And he's working at 14 to help pay rent while you've blown millions from my inheritance on jewelry, cars, and useless trips." Then Christopher dropped the bomb that would change everything forever. "I looked into everything," he continued, pulling out a folder he had prepared. "I hired a private investigator today. I found out that after I returned from Oxford, Olivia tried contacting me multiple times. Letters that never made it to me because you intercepted them. Phone calls you blocked. She wanted to tell me about Tyler, about the son I didn't even know existed. You silenced her for years." The silence that followed was deafening. Mary Beth turned pale, finally realizing her secrets had been exposed. "Christopher," she whispered, "we only wanted to protect you." "Protect?" His voice was cold now, controlled, more terrifying than his shouting. "You destroyed 3 lives. Olivia died alone, struggling to support our son. Tyler grew up without a father, without opportunities, without knowing he had a family. And me? I lost the first 14 years of my son's life because of your lies." Christopher turned to Victoria, who had been silently witnessing everything, stunned by the revelations. "Victoria, I understand if you want a divorce. Finding out your husband has a teenage son isn't exactly what you signed up for in a marriage." But Victoria, to everyone's surprise, stood up and picked up one of the photos of Tyler. "Christopher, this boy is your son. That means he's my family now too. When can we meet him?" Her response broke Christopher completely. He hugged her, crying with relief and gratitude while his parents watched their dynasty of lies collapse. "Leave," Christopher said, finally turning to Mary Beth and Charles. "Get out of my house, now." "This is our house too," Mary Beth protested, her mask of elegance now completely shattered. "It was," Christopher corrected. "This house was bought with my inheritance. The money you've spent over the last decades was mine. From now on, you'll learn what it's like to live without the income you always took for granted." That's right. There was still that little detail. Christopher's parents had only been administrators of the fortune while he was a minor. After that, they were nothing but hangers-on. His grandfather knew exactly who his son and daughter-in-law were and left them nothing. Christopher was the wealthy one in the story. His parents were broke and fading. Charles made one last desperate move. "You can't do this, Christopher. We're your family." "Family?" Christopher scoffed bitterly. "Family doesn't sabotage their children's happiness. Family doesn't hide grandchildren for 14 years. Family doesn't let a child live in need while they swim in luxury." And that's how my death became the catalyst for the justice I never got in life. 3 weeks after my funeral, which Christopher paid for, turning a simple ceremony that Tyler could barely afford into a farewell worthy of a life well lived, father and son met for the first time. Tyler, initially shy and guarded, quickly realized he had gained not only a father, but a second mother in Victoria, who welcomed him with genuine affection. "You have your father's eyes," she said when she met him, "but your mother's smile. She must have been an extraordinary woman to raise such a special boy all on her own." Christopher enrolled Tyler in the same private school he had attended, hired tutors to help him adjust, and, most importantly, spent countless hours listening to stories about me, about our life together, and about the sacrifices I made to raise him. Mary Beth and Charles were forced to leave the mansion and experience, for the first time in decades, what it's like to live with limited resources. The generous allowance they had always received was cut off completely. Christopher's siblings, who had lived as leeches off the family fortune, also lost all their financial privileges. "You're going to learn what it means to work for a living," Christopher declared during a tense family meeting, "like Olivia did, like Tyler did at 14, like millions of people do every single day." Tyler inherited not only the fortune that had always been rightfully his, but also discovered an artistic talent passed down from his father. His first paintings, created in the studio Christopher built for the two of them to share, depicted our simple life full of love in that tiny apartment, works he called his most precious. Victoria surprised everyone by becoming the mother Tyler had never truly known. She didn't try to replace my memory, but chose instead to honor it, creating an album with every photo she could find of our life together. My accidental death became the perfect revenge, not out of malice, but for justice. Sometimes you have to lose everything so that those you love can finally receive what they always deserved. Tyler was now 16, studying at one of the best schools in Boston, and plans to pursue both art and law. He wants to be an artist like his father, but also a lawyer to defend people like us, the ones trampled by powerful families. I didn't live to see my son grow and thrive, but my death ensured he would have every opportunity I ever dreamed of giving him. In the end, I still managed to be the mother he deserved, even if I'm no longer here to watch him shine. And maybe that's the sweetest revenge of all, watching love triumph over greed, truth destroy lies, and justice bloom where once there was only cruelty. My name was Olivia McCarthy, and this is the story of how my death gave life to the justice I had always sought.